Hey guys, what is up and welcome back to another Cemu installation guide. In this video, we are going to be covering absolutely everything you could possibly need to do to get the maximum performance out of any of your games on Cemu the Wii U emulator. Before we get started, there are a couple of things that you are going to need to do. You are going to need to make sure that you have C++ Redistributable 2017 installed on your computer, and you are also going to need to make sure that all of your drivers and system softwares are up to date. As well as this, you are going to need to make sure that your graphics card supports at least OpenGL 4.1. Once you are happy that everything on your system is up to date, let's get this setup guide started. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do is to download Cemu, Cemuhook, your graphics packs and shader caches for whichever games you are going to be playing. In the description, you will find a link to a repository of many different shader caches. All you need to do is download one and extract it to somewhere like your desktop. Later in the video, I will show you exactly how to rename one for your specific game. So the first thing we're going to need to do is to extract our Cemu build to a folder of its own. I'm simply going to be using 7-zip and I'm going to extract it to Cemu 1.13.0. Next, let's drag this to the center of our window and open this folder. Once you have this folder opened, you are going to need to drag and drop your Cemuhook zip file into this folder. Next, you want to right click on it and once again using 7-zip, you want to extract this here. Once you have both of these DLL files, you can simply move your zip file back to your desktop or delete it. The next thing we want to do is get all of our graphics packs for our specific games. Open the graphics pack folder and drag and drop your graphics pack zip file into this folder. Once again, use 7-zip and extract these graphics packs here. It may or may not ask you to replace certain graphics packs files. If it does, simply click yes to all of these different prompts. This process can take quite a large amount of time depending on how fast or slow your CPU is. And there we go, you now have all of the available graphics packs for all of the supported games in Cemu Emulator itself. When you scroll down to the bottom here, you can also drag this zip file out of this folder or delete it if you wish. Next up, we are going to be putting our shader cache into its correct location. First, all you need to do is open this shader cache folder, come to transferable, and then drag and drop the shader cache which you previously downloaded into this folder. Please be aware that every single game on Cemu Emulator uses a separate shader cache. This is just my Breath of the Wild cache. Later in the guide, I'm going to show you how to rename your shader cache files to work with your specific games. The next thing we want to do is come to your Cemu exe, right click and come to Properties. Next you want to come to Compatibility and you want to run this program as administrator, disable full screen optimizations, and in the latest Windows 10 build select Change High DPI settings. You want to make sure to tick this box that overrides high DPI scaling behavior, scaling performed by application, and you also want to tick this box right here. Once you have these two boxes ticked, all you need to do is come down and hit the OK button and then make sure to apply any settings. Now that we have all of those changes made, we are now ready to launch Cemu exe for the very first time. Now that the Cemu window is open, the first thing we are going to do is set up our inputs on our controllers. All you want to do is come to Options, Input Settings, and in this window you are going to be emulating the Wii U gamepad. Since my controller is X input, I select X input and then select controller 1 from this list. I'm just going to quickly set up my controller maps right now. If you do not have a controller and instead wish to use mouse and keyboard, you can find my detailed guide for that down in the description of this video. For this blow mic button, I generally set it to the F key on my keyboard, and then I generally set these dead zones to 10 or 11%. I'm just going to leave them at 10% for now, and next we are going to need to apply this controller profile an actual profile name. I'm simply going to call this Controller 1. And then once you have added a name, simply click the Save button. You should now see that your controller profile appears in this drop-down profile window. This is basically what you are going to need to do for any of these different controller maps if you wish to play different games with multiplayer on Cemu. Generally, you're going to want to have the Wii U gamepad as your first controller, and then Wii U Pro controllers for every other gamepad after that. Once you are happy that all of your input settings are correct, you can simply click this X button and proceed to the next step. The next thing you want to do is download the shared fonts that are provided by using Cemuhook. All you'll want to do is click this Download Now button and it should begin downloading. If you have any issues with these shared fonts downloading, you should simply add Cemu and Cemuhook as exceptions in your antivirus software or turn off Windows Defender. So for the next step of this video, you are probably going to need some games to run on this emulator. You can find my Getting Games guide linked in the description of this video. I would highly advise following that before you proceed any further. In the event that you already have your games, let's continue. In order to have your games show up in your games window, you're going to want to come to Options, General Settings, and as you can see, quite a lot has changed in this General Settings tab. From this window, you can turn on and off Discord Rich Presence. You also have access to all of the different language packs for Cemu Emulator. I'm simply going to leave mine at default and turn on Discord Rich Presence. Next, to add your games to your games list, all you need to do is select your game path, and if you followed my Getting Games guide, yours should be stored in a folder that is titled Wii U Games. This is my folder right here. Please be aware that you do not select your individual games, you need to select the folder which contains all of your different game copies. Simply select this folder, click Select Folder and close this window, and all of your games should appear in the games list like so. In my own games list window, you can currently see that none of my game titles are showing their updates or DLCs. This is because I have not yet transferred over any of my files from my previous Cemu version. In the next step of this guide, that's exactly what we're going to do. If you are new to Cemu Emulator, you can ignore this step as you will not have a previous Cemu folder. Once I've put these two separate folders into separate windows just for clarity, I'm going to show you all of the files that you need to transfer from your previous Cemu build. The first thing you're going to need is your MLC01 folder. You're also going to want your settings.bin, your settings.xml, and if you use online mode in Cemu Emulator, you're going to need your cprom.bin and your otp.bin. The most important folder we are going to transfer is this MLC01 folder as it contains our updates, DLCs and all of our saves. All you want to do is right click, click copy and then right click in your new Cemu folder and paste all of these files. Please be aware that depending on how many DLCs, updates and save games you have in your previous Cemu folder, this process can take quite a large amount of time. As you can see, I had to transfer over 18 gigabytes of data. I, however, will be speeding up this footage in the guide so that you guys do not have to wait through all of this transfer. And there we go, all of our files are now successfully transferred over from our old Cemu version. I, however, would highly advise that you hold on to your old Cemu version folder at least for a few days. This older folder will act as a backup for your updates, DLCs and game saves. You should delete it after a few days once you are happy that everything has been successfully transferred over to the newest Cemu version. Let's now open Cemu once again, and when I do so, we should see that all of my updates, all of my DLCs and all of my game time is now showing in my games list. As I previously said, if you are happy that all of your data has been transferred, you can now delete your previous Cemu folder. In the next part of this guide, I'm going to be showing you some general optimizations and some of the best settings you can use with Cemu. Once again, you're going to want to come to the Options tab. Coming to GPUBufferCacheAccuracy, you're going to want to set this to low and fast. Coming back to Options and down to Experimental, you can see that this useRDTSC setting is currently set to off. You only need to turn this on if your game has buggy audio. Coming to the General Settings tab, we are going to come across to the Graphics pane. As you can see in this graphics pane, this is where the majority of Cemu's graphical options are. You're going to want to leave VSync on, full sync at GX2 draw done on, and use separable shaders. You're going to want to use bilinear filtering and keep aspect ratio. Coming across to the Audio tab, you can select different APIs, however direct sound is only available right now. I would also advise leaving your device set to your primary sound driver. In this window, you can also adjust the volume of the Cemu application itself. I'm just going to leave mine at 51%. Coming across to the Online tab, this is where you can select and turn on online mode in Cemu Emulator. Please be aware that in order to do this, you are going to need to own and have transferred files from your Wii U itself. Once you're finished in this section, simply click the X button and you are now done. Next, we want to come to the Debug tab, and if you are an AMD GPU user, you want to set this precompiled shader cache to disabled ignored. If you are an NVIDIA GPU user, you want to leave this at enabled default. This step is quite important, especially for AMD users, so if you are an AMD GPU user, please remember to set it to disabled. Once you have this setting changed, you want to come back to Debug again, come to Timer Accuracy, set this to 1 millisecond, and then come back to Debug, Custom Timer, and set this to QPC at 1x speed. All of these settings I have just shown are absolutely integral to getting the best possible performance and load times in Cemu Emulator itself. Once you have all of these settings changed, we can move on. The next thing I'm going to show you is some optimized game profile settings for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. To open your game profile for any specific game, all you need to do is right-click on the game in the games list and select Open Game Profile. These are the settings that I myself currently use for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild on Cemu Emulator itself. Both AMD and NVIDIA GPU users are going to want to add this line, Disable Precompiled Shader Cache. For AMD users, as I previously stated, you also want to have this set to Disabled Ignored. There are also several other changes you may want to make to this game profile. For example, this CPU mode, you are going to need to use either single core, dual core, or triple core recompiler. You can simply follow the graphics on screen right now to know exactly which recompiler to use. Also, you may want to change this accurateShaderMul equals true line to read accurateShaderMul equals min. Doing this will save you quite a significant amount of RAM, especially so if you have a low RAM amount like 4 or 8 GB, and can also slightly boost your performance in-game. Once you have all of these changes made, come to File, Save, and you can now close this game profile. If you wish to know any of the best possible game profile settings for any other game on Cemu Emulator, either leave a comment down in the comment section or you can join my Discord. Over there is a specific chat channel dedicated to the best game profile settings for any games on this emulator. You can find a link to my Discord down in the description of this video. We're basically now done with the setup of Cemu Emulator. I'm now going to show you some graphics, RAM and CPU optimizations. Okay, let's get things rolling with some optimization settings for NVIDIA GPU users. Right-click on your desktop and open NVIDIA Control Panel. First of all, you want to come to Adjust Image Settings and make sure that you are using the Advanced 3D Image Settings. You can either click Take Me There or come to Manage 3D Settings and Program Settings. In this window, you want to find your Cemu EXE in this drop-down area. In the event that you cannot find your Cemu EXE here, all you need to do is click this Add button. Once this window pops up, you should be able to find your Cemu EXE right here. If you can't, simply click Browse, navigate to wherever your Cemu folder is stored. Mine is on my desktop, select it, and then select your cemu.exe. Since I already have mine added to my NVIDIA control panel, I do not need to select mine again. I'm simply going to click Cancel and close these windows. These are the best settings for use with NVIDIA GPUs. You want to set anisotropic filtering to off. Maximum pre-rendered frames wants to be set to 1. You want to set your OpenGL rendering GPU to your actual GPU, in my case my 980 Ti. Power management mode wants to be set to prefer maximum performance. These two settings right here are going to be automatically set to this when you turn off anisotropic filtering. And finally, you want to set threaded optimization to on, and you also want to set this triple buffering setting to on. Once you have made all of these changes, all that you need to do is click the Apply button in the bottom of the NVIDIA Control Panel window, and we are now done with our NVIDIA optimized settings. Let's close this window and take a look at some optimized settings for AMD GPU users. You are basically going to want to copy exactly what you see on screen right now. Some of the most important settings are OpenGL triple buffering, morphological filtering, and shader cache being set to either AMD optimized or just setting it to on. This shader cache setting is absolutely integral to removing 100% of GPU related stutter in combination with the two precompiled ignored settings I showed previously in this guide. Once you have all of these settings copied, we can continue. Next up, I'm going to be showing you some CPU based optimizations that can make your processor run at its maximum possible speed, allowing you to attain the best possible performance in this emulator. Right click the Windows logo and come to Power Options. Once in this window, you want to come to this Advanced Power Settings button right here. You need to make sure that your computer is using this high performance power plan. Next, you want to come to Change Plan Settings, and inside of this window click Change Advanced Power Settings. Next, you want to scroll down through this window until you see Processor Power Management. You want to make sure that the minimum processor state and the maximum processor state are both set to 100%. You should also make sure that your system cooling policy is set to active. Once you have made sure all of these settings are correct, simply click the Apply button and click OK. We are now done with these power optimization settings. Next, I'm going to be showing you how you can set up a page file or virtual memory in the event that you are running a PC with 8GB of RAM or less. If you are not aware, Cemu Emulator itself is highly reliant on caching shaders. All these shaders basically get cached through your RAM. In order to set up a page file, you need to come to your control panel. If you don't know how to find it, simply search for it, type control panel into this window and open it from the app itself. Once control panel is open, come to System and Security. Next, come to System, Advanced System Settings, and once in this window, you want to come to this Performance tab right here. You want to click on this Settings button right here, and then come to the Advanced tab. You should see your virtual memory right here. As its description says, a paging file is an area on the hard disk that Windows uses as if it were RAM. We're going to be setting up a page file of about 5,500 megabytes. In order to set this up, click the Change button, and once in this window, you want to select your OS or your fastest SSD, select Custom Size, and then set both of these options to 5,500. Once you have both of these set to 5,500, click this Set button right here, click OK, and then click the Apply button. If it is the first time you have set up a page file on your system, it may prompt you to restart your computer right now. Once you have restarted, your page file will be applied and is now ready for use on your system. So now that we've set up Cemu, done our GPU optimizations, our CPU optimizations, and that I've now shown you how to set up a virtual memory pool in order to boost your performance if you have a low RAM amount, it's now time to boot Cemu once again, set up our graphics packs and load into our games. So before we can actually get our graphics pack set up and load into our games, I'm going to now show you how you can rename your shader caches for each of your specific games on Cemu Emulator. First of all, you are going to need to boot your game for the very first time. In the event that it doesn't load a shader cache, simply close Cemu, and next you want to open your log.txt or log file in the Cemu main directory. Once this text document opens, you can see in the window right here that your shader cache name is listed on line 14. If you are not using Notepad++, this will simply open with Notepad and the line will still be present. All that you need to do is find this line in your log.txt and copy this data. Simply highlight it, right click and select copy. Next, come to your shader cache folder, transferable, and the file that you downloaded for your select game. You need to rename that file and make sure that the two shader cache names match between your log and the file in your shader cache transferable folder. Please be aware that every single game on Cemu Emulator uses a completely different shader cache file. You cannot use just one shader cache for every single game. Now that you know how to rename your shader caches, let's turn on some graphics packs for use with our games in this emulator. Come to Options, Graphics Packs, and this is the new graphics pack window in Cemu Emulator. At time of making this video, there are some experimental graphics packs in development for Cemu 1.13.0D. When they are available for download, I will have them linked in the description and pinned in the top comment of this video itself. Let's take a look at some graphics packs you're going to need for best performance in Breath of the Wild. I use no depth of field, FPS++, I use this LWZX crash workaround. For NVIDIA users, you need to use these two NVIDIA packs and this Square Kakariko Torches Shadow Fix. AMD users should use these two AMD Graphical Fix graphics packs, and everyone can use a resolution graphics pack to fit the power of their select graphics card. Once you have any of these packs turned on, simply click the X button and you have now turned on the requisite graphics packs for your specific games. So now that we have absolutely everything set up 100%, let's load into our game, load through our shader cache and see what performance is like. Please be aware that the very first time you load through your shader cache, it can take quite a large amount of time, but every other shader cache compilation after that will be a very fast one. If you are an NVIDIA GPU user, I have a very specific guide that will show you the best method for using shader caches with Cemu Emulator. That guide will be linked down in the description. If the loading screen is very long between the end of your shader cache compilation and getting to the in-game menus, please make sure that you have a debug custom timer turned on. The one that I recommended previously in the video was QPC. And there we go, we are now loaded into our in-game menus. My inputs are correctly working, so let's now load in-game and see what our performance is like on the Great Plateau, one of the most performance demanding areas in the entire game. And there we go, we are now loaded into game and our performance is practically locked to 60 FPS at all times. This kind of performance level, however, is not typical. I just have very good performance because I myself am running an 8700 clocked at 5GHz, 16GB of DDR4 3000MHz RAM and a GTX 980 Ti. So there we go guys, a full and complete setup guide for Cemu version 1.13.0. As I previously stated, once the experimental graphics packs are ready for use in this new Cemu version, I will let you guys know as soon as possible and they will be posted down in the description of this video as well as the top pinned comment. So once again guys, cheers for checking out the video, remember to like it if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, and as always, subscribe to the channel if you want to see all future videos from me.